All right, so let me go ahead. I'm introducing this evening's speaker, and sorry, not speaker, presenter, and he is Distinguished Lieutenant Governor Lloyd Distant Jr. So DLG Lloyd Distant had the privilege of being exposed to Kiwanis at an early age when his father became a chartered member of the Kiwanis Club of downtown Kingston. Lloyd first became a full member of the Key family when he became a chartered member of the Key Club of Campion College, and he later went on to being elected as Lieutenant Governor for the Caribbean District in 1984 and Governor for Circle K in 1985. He joined the Kiwanis Club of downtown Kingston in the mid-90s and was elected president for the 2003-2004 administrative year. Kiwanis celebrated its 100th anniversary in 2014 to 2015, and that's the year that Lloyd served as Lieutenant Governor for Division 23 East. He was elected by his fellow Lieutenant Governors as their class president, and at the end of the year, he was among five Lieutenant Governors recognized as distinguished. Following his year as Lieutenant Governor, he was recruited as Vice Chair for the EC&C District Formula Team and was subsequently appointed the District Chair by Kiwanis International. Shortly thereafter, he also had the honor of being appointed the EC&C District Chair for the I-Plan. An entrepreneur at heart, DLG Lloyd is a director of several businesses. He's also a past president of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce and the Justice of the Peace for the parish of St. Andrew. Father of two daughters, he's an avid sports enthusiast. His personal motto, the greatest gift one can bestow on another is the gift of a good example, is derived from the underlying theme in the second objective of Kiwanis International. Fellow Kiwanians, may I ask you to open your microphone and let us welcome DLG Lloyd Distant. Sorry, my apologies, didn't realize my members are not hearing us welcoming our presenter. You know, what's happening with my members this evening?
If you don't hear my clap?
No.
It's all fine, LG. It's all fine. I think everybody just wants us to get onto it so we can get on to the rest of our Tuesday evening. So again, thank you for the introduction, LG Ronnette, and good evening, fellow Kiwanians. So I've been asked to speak on the topic, thinking strategically and leading effectively, and I'm going to attempt to cover with a couple of slides to use as a guide, cover two areas and two distinctly separate components. But I think as we get towards the end, you'll see how they both come together, because to be a strong, effective leader, this component, which is about thinking and exuding strategy, is going to be a very important component. If you don't mind, I'm going to turn off my video for part of it. I'm not sure what the quality of the presentation is going to come out like with the video on throughout, so I may turn it on and off as we go through if I feel that there are challenges, or if any of you feel that there are bandwidth challenges, I can do so as well. So let's start off by talking about thinking strategically, and with all strategic or planning type processes, one of the first thing anybody who facilitates a session would say is to start off by thinking with the end in mind. So in your own mind, if you take a moment and think, what would you like your club to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And just think it through in terms of the club membership, organization structure, how they approach projects, fellowship, the excitement, the engagement, the collaboration that takes place in the club. If you take this few moments as we're sitting there and as I'm talking, have this vision in your mind of my club has been this. You think of all the positives you you've experienced in your period as a Kiwanian, the positive things you've seen in other clubs, and just your longer term view of your own club. If you create that thought in your mind, then you know that's the end result. And the question you want to ask yourself is, how do we get there? How do we get to that end result from just having that vision of the future for your club? So, you know, the last point that says know where you want to go, that's the vision that you just put in your mind of what your club looks like 5 years from now. That's the vision. And then you have that thought even before you start to develop the plan. Now, I won't say it's going to solely be your vision, and you're going to see how, and as we go through, you're going to get I hope you'll get a feel of how you ensure you encapsulate the vision of not just yourself, but other members of your club as you develop the future for where you want to go. So, old African proverb, I think many of us have heard it in different ways in the past. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, you have to go together. So it's just a recognition that certainly we can each individually be some of the brightest people, some of the best thinkers. And as a result, we can actually get things done just by putting a great plan in place, engaging people, inspiring people, they will get behind it. But if everyone has a buy-in, everybody feels as though they have skin in the game, that they are a part of this process, and that is not driven by one person, the level of commitment, the level of camaraderie, the level of engagement in how they approach doing their role or playing their role, it becomes, the term I'm going to use, it becomes a core component, it becomes part of the foundation of what is used by the club and used by everybody who is involved in the process to achieve that vision. So, you know, as we speak about having that vision in our mind, we have to ensure that we have all the key persons, which in reality is all members of the club, have got to feel as though they are part of this journey of achieving this vision that the strategic plan will deliver for the club. So I always suggest, as we start to have a thought, as you start about developing a plan, it's about getting a couple of people together. A planning process ought not to include the 30 members of your club, the 40 members of your club. You want to start off with a small committee that is trusted by members of the clubs, that has some amount of influence, but what is very important is that they are committed to the club, that they have a diverse thought process. If you have everybody's thinking the exact same thing, it's highly unlikely that you will get the most of this planning process. And so I always suggest to to clubs when I'm talking about this topic of planning, about identifying a couple key persons. Invariably, I suggest at least somebody who's been in the club, depending on the age of your club, of course, somebody who's been in the club for a couple of years, somebody who has been leadership in the club a few years back, somebody who is current leadership, and somebody who is a president-elect or a vice president, somebody who is future leadership of the club. At least those three people should, at least three persons representative of that different periods in the club's life ought to be a part of it. Again, if your club is only 2 years old, then you'd be slightly different than a club that's 10 years old, or like the Kiwanis Club of Mandeville, which I think is, what's Mandeville? 50 some odd years old now, right?
55.
Very different, 55, correct. So I have found that when we get into the planning process, you've got to take it beyond. And what is very hard for Kiwanis clubs to do is to think beyond the year as president. So whilst the first year of the plan is very important, for a plan that is going to achieve a particular vision in 5 years from now, it has got to go beyond just the year of the person who is leading it. So as president, I'm sitting here, and I give the example of my club, Downtown Kingston, some years back. The planning process started with the president-elect, and the first vice president. So when that plan was made, you had 3 years of the leadership that was totally ensconced in this plan because they were all a part of developing this plan. So their commitment to it was higher. They were very clearly strong contributors in the club because they were the persons whose specific years the planning process was going to impact. And so you don't get what we didn't get what we often see in many Kiwanis clubs, this fractiousness that you start a plan, you know, somebody comes up and says, this is what I want to achieve in 3 years. And then the next president comes and says, yeah, well, that was your plan, but you know what? I have a different plan. And then all of a sudden the focus of the club changes and you end up not having a consistent process towards development because it gets fragmented across different leaders in different years. So I believe, you know, in organizations like Kiwanis, it's very important that the leadership over the next couple of years are actively involved in the planning and development process. In Kiwanis, at the district level, just give this one more example, at the district level, the strategic planning, long-term planning, it's not called strategic planning. The district has a long-term planning committee. And every year, the incoming vice governor actually chairs the long-term planning. So, you know, Pam would have chaired the long-term, Governor-designate Pam would have chaired the long-term planning committee 3 years ago, 2 years ago. Last year, it would have been chaired by vice governor-elect designate coming in. And this year, it's going to be chaired by vice governor-designate Sharon. So the long-term planning for the district consistently has the person who is responsible for delivering in the next couple of years, chairing it. So they always have ownership of the activities that they're seeking to implement at the district level. I will commend your club thinking through a very similar process. So Kiwanis has a vision, right? It's on the screen. I won't necessarily read it, but it's very clear that the vision for Kiwanis is not about the immediate vision of what it is today. It encompasses where we are today, but it has a component of it that speaks about where it is that we want to be. That purposeful vision, as you think about crafting a vision for your club, I would encourage that ought to be a core component of how you're thinking about it. That vision statement that is relatively easy to state or remember. Everybody knows it. So if in this instance, it's easy. You want to be a positive influence in communities. I think we can all hear that and understand that. And the reason is that we want children to wake up in the communities that believe in them and provides them with the support so they can be the best they can be. Very simple, very clear. It's easy to break down and easy to remember. You don't have to remember it word for word, but you've just got to remember the essence of it. And you know, as your club is developing a vision, as you sit in the leadership of your club, this whole this nice term that says thinking strategically really is about saying, firstly, what's this vision, the end in mind, and can I put it in words that's so easy for everyone to repeat because it resounds with them. It's what they believe in. It's what they understand the club or the movement is about. And so the vision statement is certainly one of the first things. And what's important about a statement too is that at any point in time, something is being done that seems to be veering off a plan. It's easy to pull back and ask the question, if we're doing this, is this causing our club to be a positive influence? Is this making a better world for the children? And so the vision statement should almost always easily pull you back to questioning, challenging, and ensuring that the things you're doing are the right things to ultimately achieve the vision. So, you know, this is often best done in a meeting type setting where you have, you know, small groups and 3 or 4 persons can go off and speak about a vivid description for their club. In this kind of setting, it's more just my sharing and, you know, seeking your feedback around a vivid description. I'm not going to say that this is a particular vivid description for Portmore versus Spanish Town versus Central Portmore. You've got to identify what the vision, what that vivid description is for your club. So if I can just pause for a second and ask, how many of you online now have a strategic plan for your club? Or does any club online have a strategic plan in place?
All right, so I can answer in the meantime while they're thinking. I did ask my clubs this year to prepare a strategic plan. I know that Greater Portmore did one and another club. So the other members could just respond whether or not you would have completed same.
I respond. No.
You don't know? Okay. Any other club completed their strategic plan?
Started.
Okay.
All
All right.
We would have had this is DP Donovan, we would have had a project plan. Not sure it's a full strategic plan, but it's a project plan as to what we plan to do for the entire year.
Project for
We
projects,
focus on
okay.
this plan.
Okay. Okay.
So when I did a similar presentation in 23 East, I would say maybe 10% of the clubs had either had one before. I would say no, most of the clubs at one point had one before, but it never sustained. Part of the challenge is that many of them never sustained. So you had it lasted for a year or two, and then it just fell by the wayside. In the introduction, LG Ronnette gave, she mentioned that I was asked to chair what was called the I-Plan at the district level. And the I-Plan was an initiative by the Kiwanis International Board to ensure that all clubs started this process of putting a strategic plan in place. Again, with so many things in our movement, international, district, division, and club level, is that a great idea. Everybody at some point in time thought it was absolutely necessary. A lot of resources went into developing templates for a club strategic planning activity. And then 2 years later, the incoming president and the vice president who took over as a president pushed it for 2 years. And then somebody else came in, the strategy, the approach changed, and the I-Plan, whilst it's still carried on, discussed in some districts, is no longer a Kiwanis international imperative. Your club's vivid description is something I'm going to ask you as we come to the end of this section that's talking about strategic planning. When you go through that process of developing your strategic plan for your club, ensure that what is at the vivid tip of the tongue of every club member is your club's vivid description. That's the vision of what your club ought to be like. So I mentioned timing that Kiwanis came up with this strategic, international strategic plan that they are aiming to cascade down to clubs. This was 2017, so it's about 7 years ago. Is anybody in the club familiar with the I-Plan? Or what these icons mean? Okay. All right, so not surprising these things disappear from the life of Kiwanis after a few years. So the strategic plan was, or the international strategic plan that they're aiming for clubs to look at, was to focus on 4 specific areas. The first area is was the formula. For those of you who remember the formula sets where we had club coaches, club openers, but this was really about membership engagement, membership growth, membership development, growth, engagement, and development. And so the heart represents the formula, which means if your heart is in, certainly saying what it's saying is if your heart is in Kiwanis, then you should have the passion to want more people to join Kiwanis. So why don't your club create a plan that's focused on your members? The second is the children being the priority for Kiwanis, but it was really around, at the time, the signature project. So we all know the signature project. It continues to be a core component of the distinguished status and a requirement of the district in terms of a significant focus across Kiwanis that all clubs should have a signature project. And so the second icon, the one where you see the child's face, really is about having impactful service projects, and a signature project was identified as one of the deliverables for all clubs' strategic plan. The third area was Kiwanis image. And at that point in time, they really honed in on the imagery of Kiwanis, marketing of Kiwanis, and how the Kiwanis brand is put forward, how the Kiwanis brand is perceived. So the third area, all clubs need to think about how we are promoting Kiwanis in a consistent fashion. And as we know in Jamaica, whatever happens, however one Kiwanis club is seen, invariably the rest of Jamaica sees all of Kiwanis. Because a scammer went around collecting money, saying that they're going to do something in Kiwanis' name, but nobody knew that it was, just this person who was a former member of a particular club in Jamaica. All they knew, it was a former Kiwanian. And so the brand was very important for us to look at. And the final area, you heard, the term, it takes cash to care. So funding and financing of your club, of your clubs, would have been important. So the Kiwanis International Strategic Plan, called the I Plan, was focused on those 4 areas. And it was an attempt, I think it's still a great structure and model to use. So not taking this course and this presentation to go through specific areas of the I Plan. But certainly there's a lot of documentation that's still available. And I think it's almost like a cheat sheet, a quick way for clubs to grab something and say, okay, let me just follow this template to develop a plan for my club. So as we get into the strategic planning process, it's not as basic as just answering these 3 questions, but to be very honest, if you answer these 3 questions, you're able to really build out a strategic plan for your club. Maureen, you may not realize you're not on mute, just in case. Unless you had a question. So from the strategic planning process perspective, if we just sit back, so let's create a vivid description, 5 of us sitting in a room, and let us assess, where is the club now? Where do we see it going? So what's that vivid description, that long-term vision of club membership? How many members do we have? Do we have 50 members, 80 members? Are they engaged? Is 40%, 50% of members, or 70% of members attending projects? Are we having exciting and engaging meetings and fellowships after meetings and projects? What is it that we see ourselves going, because that's the vision that we have for what our club should be like 5 years from now. And then once you're able to say where you are and where you want to get to, then you need to fill in the steps of the plan. What are the steps we're going to get to move from July 2024 to, let's say, October 1, 2029, as an example, right? And because once you build in those steps, then you have a plan, then you have a plan of action. Planning is only 10%, implementation is 90%, but at least you need the first 10%. You need that plan so you can consistently implement over an extended period. So an effective strategizing and planning process as well does a couple of things. So remember, that first question is, where are we now? It allows the opportunity for you to reframe where you are and what you would like to be. So you reframe your reality, as an example. Once you reframe your club's reality, it also allows you to refocus. So instead of trying to achieve 20 things, because over years we've had all of these projects and all of these activities, everyone has had this idea. So someone before wanted to focus on a blood drive. At some other point in time, someone wants to focus on action clubs. And you find that over the years, for many clubs, invariably, you have a focus on 20 different areas, but you probably only have 12 members that are really active and working. And as a result, 12 people trying to do 20 things, you don't always get the level of success that you're looking for. So once you've reframed and you've sort of looked back at your reality, you take the opportunity to refocus and say, you know what, for the next 5 years, here's where we like to be. We're going to spend first year and a half or first 2 years administrations focusing on these 4 areas. And you're going to really work and build those areas that it becomes natural for your club before you go to the next 4 and then the next 4. So you can achieve all of your objectives or desired objectives. So refocusing is invariably a very important part of helping to create that tunnel vision to implementing the building blocks that come out of your planning process. What also happens, and it's for those of you who've been through this in any organization, you will get it. And for those of you who haven't been through it before, haven't experienced it, I can tell you, when everybody sits down and says, okay, you know what, we're going to focus on these things, you will find a renewed energy that just comes out. I think the other one is re-energize afterwards. But what you find is everybody renews a commitment to achieving certain things. And because they're not distracted in 20 different ways, they're really focused on 4 or 5 things. You find that the level of commitment, the focus, the ability to hone in on achieving specific things renews a level of energy in your club. And it's, as I recall, renews leads into re-energizes. It's just a process that as you go through the discourse, as you engage your club members and as they engage with you, the leaders, and with this planning team and committee, these things naturally come out of the planning process. And so I mentioned before the Kiwanis International KI priority areas. This would have been the I plan, membership engagement, community impact, the Kiwanis image, that's about branding, more about branding, and of course the marketing of Kiwanis, and then ensuring your clubs are financially viable. So a quick sheet on strategic planning. And once you've gotten the vision and once you have a buy-in for the vision, is what next? I encourage, for those of you who are not familiar with the Achieving Club Excellence, Kiwanis International, if nothing else, has done a phenomenal job of creating many templates and documents and roadmaps for things that we can use. The Achieving Club Excellence Toolkit, I commend to all of you as presidents. You can get more information on it from the LG. I certainly can provide more information on it. It walks you through a process of understanding where your club is. So that first thing, which is gather and analyze, I consider to be very important. If you recall, 2 slides before, I spoke about where are you now? I spoke about those 3 things in planning. Question 1, first thing is, where is the club now? That gather and analyze in the Club Excellence Toolkit, there is a survey. There are 2 types of surveys that exist, and others have been developed, which allow you to survey your membership. Presidents, I encourage any incoming president, you're talking to the person who's taking over the club in the next year, use as one of the first things you do in leading into your administration is ask your club members to share with you how they are feeling about your club. It's a huge component of club engagement leading into the year, but certainly when it comes to a strategic planning process, where your members see the club and where they like the club to be is a very important component of ensuring that you have not missed anything in your diverse group, strategic planning group that exists. If your group isn't diverse enough, so you're going to find that they are almost all going to come back and say the same thing. If it's diverse, you will find that more often than not, the feedback you get from the club member analysis will be the same, very similar feedback that most of the persons sitting in the committee would have come up with. But what is very important about this first part, the gather and analyze, is that it ensures your members have a voice. Say it over and over again that whilst we may know the answer, we've got to allow everyone to come and put forward their voice so they at least know that when the plan gets presented, they've had an opportunity to provide inputs. So you gather and analyze, you know what your strategic vision is, and then you develop the plan. You see it repeated. The third thing you do is communicate the plan. The fourth thing you do is communicate the plan. Do not allow your strategic plans, your vision plans for your club to just be something that 5 people have. Do not let it be something that just the board members or a select group of executive members have. This plan, what you want to do with the club, provides an opportunity to get everybody on board, to get people re-energized, to get them to renew their commitment with a focus on the things that you're going to be doing over the next 3 to 5 years. And so communicating, providing the opportunity for feedback. So again, remember, communication is a two-way process. It's not just about saying, hey, you know, we heard you, this is what you said when we did the club membership survey. Well, here's the plan, take it, let's go and work. That's not communicating. Take a meeting, have a discussion about the different elements, take feedback, take input. You'll be amazed that many members of your club will probably come back with the exact same things you have, but they will also help you to fine-tune the thought processes that have gone into the planning and made the plan so much better. And so I'm always very big that one of the core things for leadership, which we'll get to shortly, is about how plans are communicated and how we embrace other members of our club to get involved in the process as well. And then, of course, as I said, for those we know, Bobby Winter does a lot of strategic planning. He says it all the time. You know, coming up with a plan is 10% of what needs to be done. It's the most important first 10%, but what is even more important is the implementation. We see it in governments, we see it in large organizations. There are plans and there are plans and there are 10 plans, but the challenge oftentimes is implementation. And that's why not trying to implement everything in 1 year, being able to say, here's what we want to achieve in different buckets in different years. And as a result, let us measure. So we said we're going to implement it. Did we achieve what we want to do? If not, no plan is ever perfect. You know, let's take a step back. If we didn't achieve all the things we want, let's celebrate the wins. And then let's look at what we need to do differently to continue the progress towards a vision that was developed by members of the club. Celebrating successes are very important. So, and when we get into leadership, we speak a little bit as well about how important it is to keep everyone engaged and keep everyone excited about what is taking place and about what the plans are for the club. The final thing I'll speak about, so the strategic planning is a process. In the course of this afternoon's presentation, I was going to try to walk us through the process of strategic planning, but I do believe, you know, LG Ronnette and members of 23 West, at some point in time, you can get assistance from me, and there are others who are familiar with both the, I'm going to say the template that is used. I was going to say cheat sheet, but let me say the template that was developed around the I-Plan, which I believe is, it can, for clubs that are challenged with the thought process and with the capacity, it is something that some of us can help you to walk through just how you use the I-Plan and you use this strategic planning construct to actually develop a plan for your club going forward. But once you have that plan in place, you've got to always think, and as I said before, no plan, I can really think of a plan in my many years in corporate, my many years in different service organizations, whether it's the Chamber of Commerce or Kiwanis, really seen a plan that doesn't require reworking. And we just got to be very open-minded. See, no plan is perfect. It doesn't mean that we need to, if things aren't going the way that we want, that we just need to tell everybody, stop everything else, we must do this, we must do this. We've got to keep very open-minded and as flexible as we can to say, okay, this hasn't worked the way that we want. Here are some things that we can try differently, and let's be flexible about the approach. So let's always think that as planning alternate routes, to think of, if as roadblock comes, how do we work around it? How do we find another approach or another path to deliver the same end result? And that's just the same thing. It's a plan going in the wrong direction. So we want to grow members by having these exciting kinds of engagement activities. But maybe the engagement activities we're putting forward is not the kind of thing that our members really want to do. So people start to pull back, they stop being active in the club. So if it's going in the wrong direction, again, no need to panic. We slow down, let's rethink it. What do we do differently? And reset the direction, right? So revisiting the strategy, reconsidering milestones, always important. And as I said before, this a component of communicating, bringing everybody on the inside, allowing everybody to have a voice. I know it's very difficult as a president to have the patience to allow everybody to speak, but again, I implore you that it's important to allow your members to have a voice. And some people will speak up in a meeting. Some people are the more reserved ones, and they may want to send you a message offline or have a one-on-one call offline. Find whatever path that allows you to get the engagement and input from all your members, okay? Or from as many of your members as possible. Okay. So I've covered quite a bit on strategic planning, trying to think strategically. A lot of it really comes down to having that vision and how you allow everybody to get embraced in having a similar vision. But that is a lot of where thinking strategically comes from. Said a lot, sort of moving a bit quickly, but LG, I don't know if you want me to just continue to the next section, which is about leadership, and I'm happy to stay here and take some questions for a few moments before moving on.
Let me take a few questions. Members, do you have any questions on this topic?
Good evening.
Good evening, Prezi.
Thank you for being with us tonight. My question to DLG Distant is he has spoken about a lot of critical and key things in regards to thinking strategically in regards to clubs and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
A few important pointers were mentioned. You had said that we may have persons within the club who are willing to speak if there are any issues that may arise. And there are also persons who may not willing to speak, but they'll speak to you one-on-one and all of that. But sometimes you may even have members who are not willing to take any of those routes. But as you mentioned before, we just retreat and just stay back and watch what is happening without even trying to even suggest any other ways how they think things can be run differently. So usually when you have situations like that, how do you as a leader try to approach the matter? And if you notice members who are being that type, which is to retreat, how can you deal with it as a leader? Thank you.
Thank you, President. I mean, that's a really good question. It's one of the biggest challenges that takes place in many organizations, especially when an organization or a club has had some fractiousness in the past. Because invariably what happens is, I'm going to add an additional comment before I give a response. What invariably happens is this term that's called people who are passive aggressive, right? So you have this member of the club who they are there, but they're not contributing. And in fact, oftentimes the comments they make, they are being cynical. Well, let me say they're at least at the very best being skeptical or they're crying down good things that you're trying to do sometimes. The best thing with those persons oftentimes is to take them offline and identify what it is for them that is most important and allow them to lead that aspect of it. I think oftentimes you find when people are leading a component of a bigger picture, that they're way more engaged in finding a way and then speaking up and then bringing other people on board as well. Those persons who are quiet and don't respond to you very quickly one-off or don't respond to you in the course of a meeting, this is the hard part of the work. It is a conversation, a one-off conversation today, another one-off conversation tomorrow, and maybe another one-off conversation a month from now before they are willing to voice their views. Everybody has a view. many people are hesitant or unwilling to share. They believe that their voice is not going to be counted. They don't believe their opinions will be counted. They don't believe that if they say something, it's because the senior heads in the club or the old heads in the club or the president and friends going to want to do what they want. Nobody's going to listen to me. And the challenge of leadership is not an easy answer, but the challenge that often sits with leaders is that it is up to us, up to you, up to us to spend the time to make people understand that their voice and their comments and their inputs are valued and will listen well as well. You want to create an opportunity to provide people where they can lead something or something that is important to them is a core component of what is taking place. And that's why even when you have 5 people who have a good feel of the club and can probably say 85% of the things that need to be done, if you are not listening to all members, if all members don't have the opportunity to provide inputs, you will find that over time they can get disengaged. And that's what you don't want. You don't want them disengaged. You don't want people to be passive aggressive. We don't want people to end up being the naysayers as we're doing great work to spend time being negative. So again, a great question. Engaging people, it's you find oftentimes it's a hard work. It's not going to make everybody 100% happy, but at the very minimum, you want to engage and let them know that they have a voice.
Thank you, DLG.
All right, DLG, you can continue.
All right, so let's talk about leadership in a voluntary organization. So the second piece of this was about leading effectively, but I've sort of changed it to speak about leadership in a voluntary organization. Because for those of us who have transitioned to leadership in Kiwanis at some point, you realize that leading in a corporate environment, leading in your household is very different from leading in a voluntary organization. I may say it again, but I've said it on many occasions. I've had, in terms of my career, I mean, I've chaired boards. I've been as managing director for Cable and Wires for a regional team. So not just Jamaica regional team, as CEO at a large conglomerate and organization in Jamaica. I've sat in these roles, and I said, as I became, none of those things prepared me for being the president of the Chamber of Commerce as leadership in Kiwanis. Leadership in Kiwanis prepared me in a totally different way, because in a voluntary organization, getting people engaged and being an effective leader really comes down to a very different approach. And we'll get to speaking about servant leadership, but how we actually engage with people, how they feel that they have a voice, how they feel that they're respected is amongst the most important things in leadership. So Kiwanis has a purpose, right? So Kiwanis, can anybody tell me what Kiwanis' purpose is? The vivid description I spoke about before. See, this is one of those groups, and I know there's only 2 or 3 people going to talk, and everybody's going to sit back and wait to hear the answer. So it's all good though. It's all good. But essentially, it is Kiwanis' purpose is to improve the world, one child, one community at a time. That's essentially what our purpose is. And as the vivid description spoke about before, it's about being the organization, about being that service organization, voluntary organization that facilitates the growth of every child to see their full potential. And from the perspective of leadership, it is, to come back to using of the term of servant leadership, but it's actually providing that kind of leadership that facilitates the engagement of all. We are a membership-led organization. So as leaders, we've got to ensure that our members are engaged. Otherwise, slowly but surely, the strength of the organization, the strength of what we're trying to achieve, or the ability for us to achieve what it is that we're seeking becomes weakened as a result. So the purpose of Kiwanis, the purpose of leadership in Kiwanis is key to speaking about how we become effective leaders. So, and there are two reflections I want to share, and then I'd like to share a little story as well. So impact, influence, and inspiration, right? That's really what you find that is core to leadership. This is a quote from Robin Sharma, so I'm not taking any, there's nothing original about this. But influence, and it speaks about impact, influence, and inspiration. Let's change the role a bit first and speak about influence, because having that passion, having people feel that passion, having people hear how you're talking about something that you believe is true, that you believe is important for us to be a strong and effective club because we want to affect our community. That influence is almost captivating. You know, it's easy to pull people along when they hear you speaking with that passion, when they hear you're engaged in that way, when they know and they believe that you're being genuine when you speak about this thing that you want to achieve. Impact is all about the results, right? So you don't get the results without having people inspired by your passion. So people inspired by your passion, your teammates in this instance, your members are inspired by your passion, and they do the work and you have the impact. That is leadership. Leadership essentially is about delivering on the objective, delivering on the vision, delivering on the goals that were established by your club or for your club or for your administrative year. Now, inspirational leadership, and again, you know, spoke about impact, influence, and inspiration. This particular quote from Sebastian Coe speaks about inspirational leadership, right? And that's about, so for those of you who may recall, Sebastian Coe, a longtime Olympian, president of the International Olympic Association for many years, the IOC, president of the IOC, certainly up to some years ago. So his comments around inspirational leadership comes from the sporting world, right? And thus you can imagine the winning mentality. In Kiwanis, our winning mentality is around being successful. It's not, whilst we all want to be distinguished, it's not about being, I'm distinguished, so I'm better than you. It is about achieving, it's about what we're able to deliver. I spoke about respect before, and that is what is so important, that it has to come out in how we communicate, how our members see us. They see us as treating them with respect. We don't assume we have all the answers. They feel as though they have, there's one president, one leader, but at the end of the day, they still have a voice, and that the president will listen to them and will allow their thoughts and comments to come into play when decisions are being made. So when you have a leader who shows that passion, who has that winning mentality, you'll see that the inspirational leadership becomes it becomes infectious, right? So it literally pulls people along with you, and that's really oftentimes what you want. You like to see, what you want to get. You want to get that enthusiasm from your members, and that's what inspiration leadership provides. So again, the values of a leader, you know, I speak about it, the objectives of the organization. So if you're not about helping children, if you're not about children being about your Kiwanis and your club being important, understanding the importance of assisting and supporting those less fortunate, it's going to come across. It's going to come across to your members. They're going to be able to feel through and understand the things that you're truly passionate about. The embracing of diversity, the commitment to stakeholders, open to the exchange of ideas. So this is openness to your club members coming up with different ideas and thoughts that you didn't have. Being responsive to them, so you know, not ignoring them, even if it takes you a day or two to come back to them, always responding to any query as best as you can. You won't have all the perfect answers, but certainly paying them the courtesy of a response, the courtesy of a listening ear. And you know, presidents, when you see large clubs and large organizations, I recall past district trustee Ralston speaking about the Kiwanis Club of Kingston having 200 and some odd members. The Kiwanis Club of North St. Andrew at one point in time having 400 members. Now, if you have a club of 400 members, how do you listen to every single member? So, you know, if people have to feel as though that they have a voice. But if you don't engage with them directly, then you have a structure and you have people around you who are engaging with them. And that's why the leadership cadre of the club is so important. But when I speak about the values of the leader, this is not just values that you, the individual, need to exude. You need all the leadership cadre of the club, you as a president, the incoming presidents, your executive, your board, to be certainly exuding all of these things. And I say this, fellow Kiwanians, that if you as a leader are saying these things and doing these things, it really becomes infectious, and you're really going to see other members of the club following along those lines, because they're going to be feeling and thinking along very similar ways as you are, because the culture and the personality of the club begins to change. And so the commitment is important. So leadership is an individual sport. So there's a story that is told, and some of you may have heard this one before, but I will share it for those who haven't. So this was some 200 years ago during the American Revolution, Civil War, Revolutionary Civil War. There was a stranger was riding through a particular army encampment. And there was, the captain in charge of his team berating his men and say, guys, get down. You need to dig this trench faster. You're not digging it deep enough. And he was literally berating his team about, he's standing up and directing everybody. He's not getting involved, directing all of them and telling them what a terrible job they're doing. And he was motivating by beating. The beatings will continue until the work gets done, kind of a thing. And the stranger got off and says, well, why are you talking to your men like this? He was still on his horse. The stranger said, why don't you get down and help them? And the captain, jumped on the stranger and said, who are you? Why are you here? Leave. If you want to help them, you get off your horse and you help them. But these guys, my workers, my members, they need to do the work. So the stranger got off his horse, rolled up his sleeves, took off his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and got down and started helping the other soldiers to dig the trench. When he completed the trench, he got up. Of course, this time the captain is looking on and saying, I'm glad for the additional help, but who is this idiot and why does he think he can come and talk to me and my soldiers that way? So the work is finished, the trench is finished. The person gets up, comes out, washes off his hands, picks up his jacket and jumps on his horse and rides back over to the captain and says, look, the next time you have a problem with the way things are run, if you have a problem with how your men are operating, please reach out to the high command, and I'm sure we'll figure something out and ensure that we get the right kind of leadership for this encampment of soldiers. At that point in time, the captain looks up, realizes that it's General George Washington that he was berating as a stranger. And just that action by George Washington at the time told a story. So it said to the other soldiers that, look, leadership, the real leadership understands our worth and they're willing to get involved and do the work with us. It is not an individual sport. We are all doing this together. But it also sent a tremendous message to the captain of what is expected. And I'm pretty sure, I wasn't there 200 years ago, but I'm pretty sure that captain never got caught in a situation where he wasn't engaging with his men differently. But that was just an act of leadership that was shown by the person at the head. Didn't have to get up and do any work. He could have just got off his horse and instructed the captain to go down there and shove with his men and embarrass him. But instead of doing that, he showed, I can do the work as well. We're all in this together. And he would have had the soldiers more motivated for him than they would ever be for the captain. So, true story, just an analogy. Heard it shared one or two other times, but I think it's a very powerful analogy to share. So, speaking about effective service leadership, as I said before, it's not very different from responsibility. How you approach it can be very different, but the responsibility rests on you as the leader really does not change. They have a vision. We spoke about that before, how important that is for strategic plan, but how important it is that a vision, you can be passionate about a vision, and that alone can stir an excitement, it can stir an engagement, it can stir a responsiveness from the membership of your club or from the people that you're working with. So having the vision and communicating it. Confidence, a huge component as well. People always pick up, always, but very often, members or persons who are in your organization can pick up when you're waffling, when you don't have confidence, when you don't believe that something can be done. And if you as a leader don't believe in it, then it's going to be very hard for you to convince anybody else in your club or in your organization that it is the right thing to do. So confidence, having a vision and having confidence are two huge things to bear in mind. Your ability to communicate, as I said before, communicate. We don't all have to be, in fact, in many instances, you find that leadership is not about the person who has the best words and who has the gift of gab and who is, that, for those of you who remember who is that next Michael Manley, who is that emotional engagement speaker that gets everybody moved, a Barack Obama kind of a conversationalist. Your communication comes in different forms. It comes in how you show respect. It comes in your willingness to sit back and listen. It is, those are all very powerful communication tools, but just also being open and honest, being willing to be vulnerable in sharing as well. Those are very powerful tools in the communication armory as well. A willingness to have people disagree. We don't all have all the right answers. We don't all know exactly what needs to be done. When people disagree, just be respectful in your responses. You may not end up agreeing with them. You may not have the best answer, but you may still not think that their answer is the right answer. And that's fine. But how you communicate, how you engage, how they leave the conversation feeling about, I had my say, I believe the person listened to me fairly. But even though the president decided not to go the way I wanted it to go, I didn't leave feeling as though I was disrespected. Those are very powerful feedback points. Those are very powerful communication points in terms of how people leave the conversations and how they are able to continue to participate in a positive way thereafter. And mentoring people. Again, if you have a club of 400, you don't have to mentor everyone. In fact, I invariably say as a leader, you can probably mentor 3 or 4 people well. You can do a little bit more of guidance and support for others, but how you utilize the people around you to also mentor becomes very important as well. But again, leadership is not all about mentorship. I say leadership is about being an inspiring person, being someone who is able to inspire either by the work you do, like a George Washington, and rolling up his sleeve and getting in, and you're inspiring people because they're seeing the passion, they're seeing you do it. Or if you can use the words to communicate and let people know that their voice is a valid voice. Those are all very powerful tools to use as leadership. And again, this point around confidence and again, being self-aware, self-assessment, also very important for leadership. So you're all getting the benefits of stories of war today. So again, another true story. I think some of it has been adapted a bit, but certainly the core message of the story is true. You can look up Emperor Nobunaga, the Japanese emperor, or Japanese general. I think he was an emperor, he's a general. So again, this is thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago. The warring tribes and fiefdoms in Japan. Nobunaga took a group of his soldiers going after a fight an enemy with superior forces. So if he had 200, the enemy probably was 600, whatever the numbers were, it was significantly different numbers of person in his fighting force. But they were at war. They were defending their turban and their families against a warring tribe. And Nobunaga said, "Look, on the way there, let us stop at a shrine. They stopped at one of the shrines, and they gave up gifts to their gods or whoever it was at the shrine. And as they were leaving the shrine, he's like, before he left the shrine, he actually said to his lieutenants, look, we are going, we're going to go, we're going to give our respects to our gods. And when we leave in the shrine, we're going to make a decision, and the gods will tell us whether or not we're going to be successful in battle." Nobunaga leaves, comes out with his lieutenants, and he says, I was told that if I flipped a coin, and depending on how the coin landed, we'll be successful in battle. Flip the coin, landed on heads or tails, so it lands on the side that he said. If it lands on this side, it means we're going to be successful. Coincidentally, it landed on the side. They went into battle. They were successful. Again, remember, they were fighting a superior force. But what became very clear is that this view that whatever their gods were saying to them at the time coming out to the shrine, the gods were behind them and supporting them. And just that alone gave them the confidence to go into the battle with a very different mindset. Went to the battle with a different mindset, just believing that they're going to win, and they won the battle. Only to tell that when the war was done, when the fight was done, they came out. Sure, some of you can figure it out by now. What Nobunaga had was actually a two-headed coin. He flipped the coin, but it was a bit of deceit on his part. But the fact is, he gave the confidence to his men going into battle. And what we find is that when our members believe, when people in our organization believe in an end result, they put out an extra effort that we can't explain it, and we call it miracles. For those of us who are Christians, we say, God is behind us and God made it happen. Whatever it was, it creates that sense of success in all of us who are involved, that we're able to jump into it, and that they give more, and we are eventually successful. So confidence, you'll be amazed at what confidence does for how people engage and for how people are committed, and for what I call successful impact of anything we choose to do. Share this. This is one of my favorites. I was quite pleased. For those of you who know who these people are, it's Lieutenant Governor DLG Don and DLG Debbie. DLG Don was LG for 23 East 3 years ago, as was DLG Debbie. She was LG for 23 Central. No, I was fortunate to be Lieutenant Governor when these two great Kiwanians were presidents of their individual clubs. Don always was full of confidence. Don, we always knew that his personality was always big, bubbly. He was going to succeed. Debbie was a very reluctant leader as president of her club, but she exuded a passion for what she knew her club could achieve. She took that passion straight into being a lieutenant governor for 23 Central, again, 3 years or so ago, 4 years ago. The tale is told they're both distinguished lieutenant governors. Again, both great examples of persons who appreciated that having a vision of what you can achieve, having the confidence to go after it, the desire and willingness to communicate and to listen, and deal with everybody with respect. So, this discussion around servant leadership exists with people from different walks of life within Kiwanis. And I'm sure that you all have it. In fact, I've often found that people who believe they don't have it, it ends up coming out from them more so than anybody else. So we speak about servant versus transformational leadership. I'm coming to the end of my presentation. For those of you who are getting a little antsy on time, we hear about transformational leadership, and for those of you who do the Dick Covey courses, for those of you who sit in corporate settings, more often than not, we speak about the leaders who we need at the helm of an organization when the organization is changing paths, when the organization needs to be transformed, like the JCF needed the transformation. That's a very different kind of leadership from a servant leadership. when you're in a voluntary organization, as I was saying before, my preparation for leading the Chamber of Commerce, which is a voluntary leadership role, is worked best for me from my experiences in Kiwanis than my experiences in corporate life. And as much as the Chamber is a business organization, it is still a voluntary organization. And we are judged on our members. Are they happy? Are they engaged? Are they coming out to support? So having a membership of 60 people and having 10% support. If you have a membership of 20 and you have 100% support, you're actually having way more impact by just having a smaller membership, but ensuring you are engaging your members. So the commitment, membership satisfaction, membership engagement is key to your being a successful servant leader. And you get these things because they believe that you are as committed, you're as impassioned about what you want to achieve as they are themselves. So this is not about, again, my having the whip and the president, you need to do things. This is about us working together to achieve things. And I'm here to serve you as the president of my club, as a chairman of a committee, as a lieutenant governor. I'm here to serve you. So what do you need me to do to enable you to be successful in the role you're playing in our organization? And this comes from, again, just like a George Washington or Nobunaga, empowering the persons at the front to do what it is that they do best, allowing people to live with positive meaning or to remember positive and meaningful experiences. The quote, I can't recall who said it, but it's come across in many studies of professional organizations that people don't necessarily remember who the leader was. What they do is they remember how you made them feel. And so it's always so important. It's not about what was achieved. It's not about, am I taking home because I got a bonus of $100 or $1,000 more. How you made me feel is a more likely indicator of how successful you are as a leader. Is about how you're making your members feel. So I leave with you these other points on effective service leadership, which is about empathy. So how you communicate, how you're treating people with respect. Again, you are the servant, so it's not that you're telling people what to do. You don't expect them to be subservient like the captain was in the story with George Washington. You're right there with them. And it's not just about communication, as I said before. It's about how you communicate, the language you use. Are you engaging and are you not just facilitating, but are you allowing the voice of each member to come out as well? So, effective leadership in Kiwanis is about being a good leader in a volunteer organization. And I think I've covered the key points I wanted to share, but here again to take questions, hear any thoughts or reflections as well. A copy of this presentation is available is going to be available at the end of this. And in LG Ronnette, I've offered to you and to your presidents, happy to share the Achieving Club Excellence tools, more information on the planning process that you can use in the iPlan to create strategic plans as well. Happy to share those.
Okay, no problem. Thanks much. Any questions or comments, members? Members?
Not at this time, LG. Not a question, but a comment.
Sure.
Very insightful presentation. As I listened to the second presentation on the leadership and being a good leader, it took me back and I started reflecting on my principles and whether or not I'm a good leader for them. because, you know, when you're listening to these, you're also not only thinking about club, but, well, for me, I think about other
Yeah.
roles as well. Other roles as well, you know. So I was thinking about club, and I was also thinking about my principles. And it resonated so much with me that I will have to speak to LG of the year about getting you to come and speak with my 20 principles. But I like the conversation, and sometimes we know these things, but it is good to be reminded from time to time so that you are strengthened to even be a better leader. So thank you very much. I liked it.
I'm glad you did.
Thank you, President Millicent. Any other comment? Members, any other comments? Right, so two things that stood out for me, you mentioned about servant leadership and the mere fact that, you know, as leaders, we're actually here to serve others and not necessarily ourselves. Because sometimes, you know, we get caught up, you know, with title and positions and forget that, especially in volunteer organization, we're here to serve persons. And that's one of my key roles this year, to be a servant leader. Secondly, you mentioned about you are judged on how you make people feel. And this is so important because it's one to lead, but at the same time, you also want to ensure that you're getting the support from your members. They're participating in activities. They are actually passionate about, you know, the things that it is that you're trying to implement. And so when you see you're getting the support, then you have to, oftentimes you have to look back and you say, all right, at least I'm doing something good. You know, so that is something that actually stood out for me. So DLG Lloyd, I want to thank you for taking the time out to be with us this evening. However, I will not be doing the vote of thanks. The person that will be doing so is President Michelle from Greater Portmore. So I'll just ask her to do that at this time.
Thank you very much, LG, and granting me the privilege to do the vote of thanks for this very interesting and informative presentation. DLG Lloyd Distant, I just really want to tell you how much this topic, thinking strategically and leading, and you have diverted and kind of switch up the other part in leadership in terms of leading in a voluntary organization. And I'm glad you brought this topic to light. I'm not sure if you were the person who thought of it or LG, but it was it's a very
LG is a bright one.
It's a very important topic because us as presidents and also members who are persons who are online, who are in the position to be president and to hold other leadership positions within their various clubs, this information that you have given to us is very, very important. And you have mentioned in the beginning that we should always start with the end in mind. You said specifically we should know where you want to go before you develop the plan, which is very important. Having a plan and having the right persons to execute that plan with you is very, very important for an effective leadership and for an effective club. You mentioned commitment, camaraderie. These are some of the things that as leaders we should have within or try to bring to our club. Identify things that are issues that needs to be addressed, and think about the future of our clubs, both clubs and in our work life as it extends further. Really and truly, the information given is very important to each and every one of us here. I know we'll take a lot from this, as you have asked before. LG has asked if there was any question, to realize there weren't much questions, because I guess everybody who is on you have brought it forward and brought it so clear to us that we are thinking and saying to ourselves, just as President Millicent had said, she now has to think of using some of these. It resonates with her, and I guess it resonates with others too, to use and some of these information that you have given us into both our club life and our work life. We thank you very much for the time that you took to come and spend with us. And as I said, the topic was very, very important. We really appreciate. You mentioned we should always have a vision as a leader, which I believe is also very important. You mentioned engagement and most of all, communicating, not just communicating, but communicating effectively and engage and with respect, which is very much important. I thank you very much again for taking the time out to be with us this evening. And we truly appreciate you, sir. Thank you very much, DLG. And
Thanks,
thank
President.
you, LG, for bringing DLG to give on this topic for us.
Sure, thank you very much. And DLG, you can see that, the members have learned, because that was a fulsome overview of, your presentation.
Some good notes.
So they were paying attention. So thank you very much again.
And thank you for the opportunity. I mean, I will share with everyone on that. When LG asked me to do it, I often get asked to do different presentations, and this is actually a busy time for me because board meetings are coming up over the next week or two. And I was hesitant, but I couldn't say no to LG, and she made sure that every other week, every time we ran into each other, she reminded me about this. So again, I don't feel pleased that I was able to come and share some information. So LG, thank you for considering me.
Sure, and thank you very much as well. All right, so members, hold on. Treasurer Wayne, do you have a question or a comment? Okay, all right.
Was on applause.
Clapping hands or something.
No problem. All right, so members, the presentation as indicated by DLG Lloyd will be shared. And also I'm aware that we have some team members who are still without power. So we have recorded this session and it will also be shared with members as well. So thank you very much, for participating in this week's session. And I will see you again next week where we'll be looking at conflict resolution. All right.